world language teachers. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Now, I know that you're here for the same reason that I am, that you are excited to talk about what we got going on today, which is part of our Start with Comprehensible Input series. This topic today is specifically on week 5, because I have a feeling that if you've been following the series, that you're now starting to get into a little bit of a sticky point, which is you probably feel like you're not doing this right. And if you feel that way, you're not alone. Anybody who's ever tried anything new, surprise, in the history of the universe has felt that way. But especially when it comes to trying a new teaching method that you know is research-based, better for your classroom, better for your health, better for your students, that there are moments that since it's new to you, you really feel that oh my God, I don't really feel like I'm doing this right. So we're going to dive in today into why you probably feel that way and what my secret weapon is to make sure that that thought is just a visitor in your head and that you can move on to what you were meant to do, which is to be an incredible proficiency-oriented language instructor. Are you ready? Let's dive right in. So as I get all this good stuff ready for you, I'm gonna share my screen. Could you jump into the comments below and tell me, number 1, what are you teaching this week? And number 2, where are you watching from? Because I would love to know. All right, here we go. Getting rolling, getting ready, doing it. Checking to see if this is the right one. Yes, it is. All right, here we go. Bam. Let's make it bigger. Oh, I'm so proud of myself. I had everything all ready. Don't you just love those moments where things actually work out the way they're supposed to with technology? Yes, here we are. So if you're new around these parts, this is me all the time. I'm always like this. My name is Devin, and I am the teacher, author, blogger, and conference host for world language teachers. You can come and join me for that. We do it once a year behind La Libre Language Learning. And if you have any questions about this presentation, please, of course, put it in the comments below. But if you're catching me on the replay, you can still put it in the comments, but you can get an answer at this email address right here. And you can also find me in all the places as well. So if you would like to see more classes like this, I have exciting news for you as well. As I scratch my nose because there's some hair in the way, that this is actually one of a series. So come and hang out with me in all those places below at La Libre Language Learning. It's the same handle everywhere. But that, let me get to this one first. Yes, that I have a schedule for you because this is part of a series. We do this every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're not able to make it live, it's cool. You can always catch the replay. So make sure that you grab the schedule that's going to be posted below right after this class. And if you're watching this live in real time, it's actually already in the discussion section, I believe, in the event piece. Go in there and check it out, but it's probably already there. But if not, I'm going to be making sure that it's in the comments below right after this class, so you'll be able to see what the rest of the classes look like. Next week, we have what does an actual comprehensible input rich lesson look like? We're going to be getting down and dirty with some examples. Now, before we get into this, let's pause. I'm going to check and see what comments we got. And I want you to be thinking about this. What are you going to be getting out of our very, very valuable time together? Now, I'm going to make sure that I set a time for myself here to make sure that we are going to be ending at a good time. But time is your most valuable asset that you have here today. And I'm really honored that you're sharing a little bit of your time with me because you're an educator, man. You busy. So make sure that while you're watching this class that you have an idea in your head of what did you come here to learn today? Why are you here? Are you here to get out of a rut? Are you here to get inspired? Are you here to laugh? You're welcome. You're going to get that too. But you might also be here to specifically learn something like, I know that I need to fix this. So I'm going to ask you again at the end of class what your intended action plan is going to be based on the secret weapon that I'm going to teach you today. If you've been around my ecosystem for a little bit, then you know that this is a little bit of my secret weapon. We're going to dive into it a little bit more today, but it's called the 2% better rule. And I'm going to ask you at the end of class, What's something you're going to do this week, even if it's only one thing? So keep that in your head. And without further ado, let's get started with what we got going on today. Today is number 5 of our Start with Comprehensible Input series for world language teachers. And this series is all about getting you in the right headspace, giving you the right tools, as well as the right mindset, because that's important, about how to get started with comprehensible input rich methods in your classroom to make you a more proficiency-oriented instructor. Because I don't believe that there's any such thing as a purist. Like there's no such thing as like a CI teacher. Like everybody uses CI, right? And it just depends on whether we're intentional with it in class or not. So today, this part, it might be the part of the year where you're starting to wonder if you've been doing this maybe since you attended Practical and Comprehensible this summer, of like, okay, I tried some ideas and now I'm wondering, like, am I doing this right? Because I don't feel like I am. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's get right into it. Here is why I made this class. I made this class mainly for myself because I know that I felt this way a lot, but also because I think that when it comes to learning how to do more proficiency-oriented teaching methods and to include more input in your lessons, the thing that's holding us back as educators from being more proficiency oriented doesn't really have much to do with know-how or knowledge. This is at least how I felt when I was first starting to get into everything comprehensible input. While I was still in the classroom, I did a lot of research in order to get started. And for a while, I definitely put it off because I felt like I didn't have time to really do it right. But here's what is the real truth about all this stuff when it comes to proficiency. And I wish that this was talked about more in comprehensible input oriented circles, if you want to call it, is that it doesn't really matter how much research that you have. It doesn't really matter how many conferences that you go to, which those are important. They're very important. But what really makes the difference between somebody who's intentional about having a proficiency oriented classroom and somebody who's not are these 4 things. 1, access to resources. Like, are you actively seeking out resources, like free or paid? It doesn't really matter. It just depends on, can you find those resources for your language? Because we all know that it's way easier to find Spanish resources than it is any other language. I can tell you that from personal experience. I taught French and Spanish, and oh my gosh, it was so hard to find French resources, so hard to find CI-oriented French resources, and especially things that weren't like no shade or no hate, but they just don't get it the way that French teachers do. Spanish teachers who would translate their stuff into French, like they just don't get the same cultural aspect that we're going for. Like they don't understand the Francophone world the way that a French teacher does, you know? French teachers know what I'm talking about. So access to resources is a huge part of it. And it's one of the reasons I became a creator, because I couldn't find the things that I wanted for my classroom. And the second thing I would say is your school and work environment. My school and work environment held me up a lot before I decided to go in really in deep into proficiency oriented instruction. You know, I always taught in public school, which wasn't any kind of barrier. It was more along the lines of I worked in a specific system, and I worked in high school, which meant that I had a lot of specific requirements for grades. I also worked in a department for a while, which meant that I had to make sure that I was working well with my very well-respected colleagues, and that things that I was doing in my classroom wouldn't affect my students down the line when they went on into other classrooms, right? And a couple of people have been asking me on Instagram recently too, is how does proficiency-oriented instruction play into things like final exams or college entrance exams or like language specific exams for them to get into specific programs? And that's real. Like that's the school and work environment that you might be in. So it has nothing to do with how much know-how or knowledge you have. And the third thing I would say though, which is what we're going to tackle today, 3 and 4, is your willingness to try something new. Because I can tell you that from all of those challenges and those experiences is that working in a department made my teaching stronger, especially when I was, you know, like one of many teachers, but probably one of the only who was working towards proficiency actively. it made me a stronger, better teacher. And the willingness to try something new was something that I had to actively work at every day. And the perfectionism piece of it too. That's really what we're here to talk about today, is when you start to really feel like, ooh, I'm just not, I don't know. I don't really think I'm doing this right. But you will start to see what perfectionism actually really means for you and what it really says about what's going on in your classroom. All right, here we go. All right, good. Everything is working beautifully. I'm glad to see it. All right, let's keep going. So I don't feel like I'm doing this right. I just started with comprehensible input methods and I'm learning more about proficiency, and I don't really feel like I'm doing this right. Cool. You're not alone. It's all right. Nobody feels like they're doing it right because it's huge. It's a huge shift. It's a huge shift going from legacy methods, whatever you want to call it, to a more proficiency-oriented approach in your classroom. And it takes a lot of subtle shifts along the way to really get into that mode. So I want to remind you that it is a large switch and it's hardcore not going to happen overnight. So every teeny tiny piece that you put into it, and I would say the most effective switch that you can make are putting into place small routines and proficiency-oriented habits in your classroom. Those make far more of a difference than throwing out all of your lesson plans and just saying that they're not worth anything and starting completely from scratch and giving yourself a lot of extra work overnight. So we're going to talk today about some ways to make a more practical approach to what is a very, very large switch. And to remind you that this is a long game. It's okay if you don't feel like you're doing it right. Nobody does. And we're going to look at a little bit of a mindset switch to, preparing and curating some resources to make this journey a little bit easier for you. But the very first thing that we're going to talk about is something that I touched on. If you haven't read it yet, surprise, this is the topic of my newsletter this week. This is what we talked about a lot in email, because I noticed that what I'm starting to get replies to in my inbox are a lot of teachers who are looking at their lessons and trying to figure out, like, how can I make every single lesson more proficiency oriented? What's the perfect way to teach this? What's the perfect way to present that? And I want to remind you of this, is that perfectionism is often something that people say about themselves as a point of pride, or that they're very detail oriented, like attention to detail, or that they have high standards for themselves and all that good stuff. But that's not actually what perfectionism is. All of those are indeed good traits. But here's what perfectionism actually is and what it shows up as. Perfectionism is really fear. It's just in a really, really high status, sneaky disguise. It's fear. It's the fear of not looking like the expert in your classroom. When I felt perfectionism, when it came to proficiency-oriented instruction, it was the fear that I would fall short of peers that I saw that were doing really excellent work in their classrooms. And then when I dug a little bit further into it, I truly understood how many hours they put into their lessons, how much work they put into this, and just how much professional development that they had gotten before they had gotten to the point where I was starting to see their lessons in different formats, online or at conferences and things like that. Like, people just don't arrive there. It takes years and years of work. And it doesn't make any sense to compare yourself to someone in those shoes. And I was so afraid that I would fall short of that, especially when other people would come and see what was happening in my classroom, especially like there was a time when I was known as like one of the only proficiency oriented instructors in my district, really, my last year teaching. And the world language department chair came to see one of my classes, and I was sweating about it for weeks, being like, I don't really feel like I'm the giant representative of all things CI for an entire district. It just happened to be that I was one of the only people who were trying things in that teeny tiny little area. But it is a lot of pressure. It was a lot of pressure. Luckily, it went well, but it was also one of those moments where I had to really check myself and realize that I was feeling perfectionism, that I was feeling like I needed to be somebody that I'm not. And what really makes a good teacher is somebody who knows their boundaries, who's trying their absolute best for their students at all times, and who's able to separate themselves from the results. Like whatever that observer saw in my classroom and whatever opinions that they had about it was about my teaching, not about who I am as a person. That's a totally separate thing. And perfectionism and our desperation, often mine sometimes, to make sure that everything went really, really well, because I'm a hardcore overachiever, is something that I often see in other teachers when they also send me emails being like, I want to make sure that I'm doing this right before I try it. Just try. Just try. Just try it. Because the truth is that you're going to get the absolute best insights from actually being in it and trying it and not doing it right several times. We're going to talk more about what that really looks like in a minute. And I'm going to teach you this rule that I'm sure that you've heard about a lot. We're going to dive into it real deep here for a second so that we can talk about what that means for the 2% better rule. Checking my time here. We're looking good. Now, just like we talked about with, sometimes the pressure that you can feel, especially from administrators coming into your room and all that good stuff, we've all felt that way before, is I want you to switch the idea from being polished in your classroom all the time to this idea, to the 2% better rule. This is a game changer. Here's the real truth. You don't have time to do everything. You just don't. And not everything is right for you. Not everything that I do will be right for you. I have lots and lots of blog articles of things that I used to do in my classroom when I was still teaching full-time. Probably only half of them will work for you because of your unique teaching situation, where you're at in your career, what you have time for, and all that jazz. Not everything's right for you. And this is the one point I want you to remember the most. 2% better adds up really fast. It adds up way faster than jumping out of the school year and saying that I'm going to do everything. I'm going to be all in 100% proficiency oriented. I'm going to tell you what that looks like in 3 months because I've done it that way before. And in 3 months, it looks like you're ready to tear your hair out and you just stop trying altogether because you're so exhausted from reinventing the wheel every single day because you don't have anything to scaffold your daily lesson plans because you're starting from scratch every single time you sit down to plan, every single time. You know what is sustainable though is sprinkling 2%, 2% every week. Every day, I'm going to add 2% more target language. Every day, I'm going to add 2% more proficiency-oriented practice. Or even every week, I might add one new routine that I see online, on a blog, in a textbook, whatever. I'm going to add one new thing each week, which is technically, like 2%. 2% better consistently is easy on your students. They gradually grow into it. You're not like shocking their systems with anything. And by the end of the year, you're 50 to 60% more proficiency oriented than you were at the beginning. Instead of going out of the gate 100% and then stopping because you couldn't keep it up. And all you have associated with proficiency is bad memories of overwork. The value of building habits matters so much more than huge strides. I'm going to tell you about some of the routines that I've established in my life at times when I was trying to be a little bit of a perfectionist about it, is that I really, really, really wanted to have this habit of meditating every day because my therapist, as well as my neurologist, told me that this would be incredible for your migraines, Devin. If you have not heard this story before, one of the reasons I had to leave the classroom is because I get really bad migraines. And so we were trying to figure out what would be a good way to go about this. And I knew meditation would be great for it. So I tried the whole idea of doing it every day for 20 minutes. And then, of course, the habit, just fell out after 14 days, that point where it got hard. And then I instead did something like I decreased it to 10 minutes and I did it like 4 to 5 times a day. I didn't do it on the weekends, and I would give myself a break on like Wednesday or Friday. And then I noticed that the next week I achieved the goal a lot easier. And I thought to myself, like, you know what? That felt really good. I'm like ready to do it on Saturday. And the next week I did it more. And the week after that, I fell off the wagon again. But then I was ready to go back onto it again. And now I meditate almost every day. And 10 minutes is like my baseline. Like that's the minimum amount of time that I meditate. But for a while, it took me a while to get up to that. I was doing 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 3 minutes because, it's not an easy practice to learn overnight. Point of this story being is that anything that you do in your classroom is like building any kind of habit in your life. Like meditation was a habit that I built in my life that you can build in yours too if you want to do something like that in your classroom. You can do the same thing. And I applied the 2% better rule, and you can do the same thing for your classroom. But are you ready for the real, really, really juicy secret? This one's so good. This one's called beta. This is beta. And this is my favorite way to help you get out of the rut of feeling like you are not doing this whole CI thing right. This was my super downfall with comprehensible input rich methods. This is the point where I was like, oh, I'm so over this. I'm like really done with this. Was when I started trying TPRS, because I heard all these teachers were having a really great time with it. I heard about it on a bunch of podcasts and I was like, oh man, I'm a theatrical person. I would love this. My high schoolers did not like it. They hated it. I hated it too. TPRS is great. Like, trust me, I know a lot of people who like it. Obviously, I wouldn't have tried it if I didn't hear lots of people talking about how much they liked it. But it did not work for me. It did not work for me. And oh man, I decided that instead of going like full on into TPRS and all of the work that involves, because I hadn't been to a conference, I didn't have any training on it. I just decided I would just go all in. That I would do this instead. I did something called a tester version after I miserably failed at it a few times. And the tester version is the beta. The beta is, like the tester group that people do when they're releasing new products and things like that. Of like, hey, can you try this app before we release it to the public? Do a tester version of your lesson before you try the big all out thing. Beta means that you're allowed to build on a concept and make it better. So from the super TPRS failure, I learned a lot from it. I learned that it was okay to fail in front of your students. They thought it was funny and they're like, Miss Gunning, just don't ever do that again. Give us something different next time. And so I tried something called what I like to call storyboarding, which is a little bit related to TPRS. It's kind of like making a comic book in your class. But what I do instead of having my students act everything out is that they draw what's happening in the story in little blocks as it's happening, kind of like you would if you were creating an animated series or if you're preparing something for a movie. Like you draw out the ideas that go with the script and the descriptions. And so that's how we started doing stories in class, but in a super low prep, fun way. And I did it once just to give it like a little tester version. And all I did was divide my whiteboard into 8 pieces and write the 8 sentences of the story into each block. And then I thought, I will draw the first 4, and then I'll call up some volunteers to draw up the other 4. See whoever wants to draw, like stick figures or whatever, what's going on in class. And this happened to be with a Mardi Gras reading that I do every year with my students that has a story that goes with it. So I tried it and it worked beautifully. All of my students who are actually pretty quiet in class normally, they raise their hands first to go up to the board and draw fun things for Mardi Gras from the story. And it was kind of a 2-for-1 for me. I could understand, I knew who could understand the story and who was having trouble. And they didn't feel like they had to produce a lot of output because it was a French 1 class. It was such a win-win. So I was able to try a harder thing while also being comfortable with if it totally bombed, because I didn't put that much work into it. So it was my beta and I built on it. And now I have a bunch of stories that have storyboarding that goes along with it. And it was one of my favorite activities to use while I was still in the classroom. So I want you to try this new idea and apply this to yourself, because this is not a bad thing. I used to say this to myself all the time. I am a B+ teacher right now while I'm figuring out this new method. And it's okay. It's not forever. I'm a B+ teacher while I'm figuring this out, and it's not forever. And that's going to give you permission to soar and go faster, because you will learn from your mistakes faster. You will be participating in that growth mindset, and you will see your progress move so much faster than if you were really trying to tweak everything, make it perfect. Or in the case of a lot of teachers, if you were like me in my old days, where you would want everything to look really good before you presented it to your students because you want to feel like the expert, right? I made that mistake all the time. I wanted to be the expert in my classroom. So I spent a lot of time designing my resources, making great PowerPoints and Google Slides and all these things, which ended up helping me out later with my new career. But that was a total waste of time because my students never noticed that stuff. I was the only one who cared about it. What they do care about is you trying new things, being cool with failing in front of them, and then owning your mistakes. But most of the time, what's going to happen is that you're not going to fail. You're going to try new things and realize what works really well and keep doing it. So if you're the 6-week student teacher where you're going to be back in that feeling for a little bit, where you're trying things out, feeling things out, and you are getting to know the whole process of what it's like to try a new teaching concept, it's okay. You've done that before. You have done that before. So we're at the end of class, friends. That is what I have for you, is these 3 important things. Okay. Beta is the secret weapon. Do not worry about your lesson being in its final throes before you put it in front of your students. It just needs to be workable. And then what you can do is build on it for years to come. That is how you will build up all of your lesson stores as you switch to this new method. The 2% better rule, which is build up your habits instead of trying to build up motivation every day. And the key switch is the idea of perfectionism, is that, of course, you don't feel like you're doing this right. You're new to this. You're not supposed to know everything. You're not supposed to feel like you're doing this right. It's a messy process. It's a long game. And perfectionism is going to hold you back. It held me back for so long, and I don't want it to hold you back for as long as it held me. So, friends, here is the next thing that I want to ask you. Drop in the comments below after you're done watching this video here and let me know, what is the one thing that you're going to do this week? What are you going to apply to your 2% rule? Where's your 2% at? Where's your 2% at? And what's something that you're already doing that's really proficiency centered? Celebrate your progress. Tell me what you've been doing in your classroom that you're really excited about, and I cannot wait to hear about it. Y'all, I have some exciting things for you though. Thank you so much for joining me for this class, and I have some exciting things to help you on your journey as you continue on. The first thing is, as we talked about earlier, is you have below here, or you will in a minute, the Start with CI series schedule. I got a whole schedule for you that you can, for classes that you can watch in the future. We got a lot more coming up for you, including a demo lesson. So make sure you grab that schedule below. And then the next thing that I have for you is that if you would like an idea of what it looks like to transition to proficiency in 9 steps, rather than, like being all over the place and spending your whole life at school, download the free 9 steps to proficiency roadmap. It's inside of this giant free ebook. It's like 20 plus pages. It's got a lot of goodies in there for you. Everything from curriculum to helping with building your curriculum and finding great lesson plans, to the most important part, which is how to transition to proficiency. You can download it at lalibrelanguagelearning.com/toolkit. And finally, let's hang out on social and continue the conversation there. I can't wait to hear what you thought of this class and where all of your proficiency-centered energy is going. And friends, I will see you next time. Thanks for joining me for this class. Catch you later.